Scared of dying alone with your cat? Well, here's something to add to that fear. They might eat you after you die. This surprisingly common concern is getting attention thanks to a recent paper out of the Forensic Investigation Research Station at Colorado Mesa University. Researchers there were studying body decomposition when they unintentionally captured footage of cats feasting on human corpses. Now, we would show you the images, but they're incredibly gruesome. Bite marks? No, nobody should see these. Now, those were feral cats that wandered in from the desert, but there are also documented cases of house cats consuming their dead owners. To find out what to make of all this, we spoke with Dr. Mikel Delgado, a cat behavior specialist at UC Davis. So let's get this question out of the way. If I was a cat owner and I died suddenly, will my cat eat me?
There's a very good chance that your cat would eat you, assuming that your body laid around for an extended period of time.
How in the world did scientists manage to study cats eating corpses?
So it's important to understand that the researchers who published this finding were not specifically looking to test if cats would eat corpses. So the study was really an observation that was made during a separate research project looking into the decomposition of human bodies. And so they had corpses outside that were exposed to the elements. And it just so happened that because they had cameras on these bodies, they were able to capture footage of feral cats kind of sneaking into the facility and snacking on some of the bodies. They have fences around so that large animals don't come in, but apparently the fences were not secure enough to keep cats out. It's interesting. These are things that kind of rub us the wrong way. They maybe don't fit into our schema of our pets being loving and loving us. It really kind of violates that idea of like, we do so much for our pets and then they turn around and eat us.
So I understand that there were dozens of bodies on this research facility, but the cats tended to have a preference. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so in this case, there were 2 cats that had been observed consuming flesh of some of the corpses. And in both cases, they picked an individual body that they seemed to go back to over and over again. And it was a different body for each cat. So we don't really know why the cats would have that strong of a preference. Maybe some of the flesh had decomposed to the extent that it was easier to actually break into the flesh and eat. And then once that process has been started, it might just be safer to go back to what you know. I know that I liked the taste, or I didn't get sick after I ate that particular bit of meat, which is really how we should be thinking about this. And so I decided to kind of review the other literature about scavenging by cats. And it turned out that there were quite a few other reports of mostly pet owners who were consumed, not fully, but, flesh eaten by their pets. There were dozens.
Wow.
And they were, mostly case reports from, police reports and other, incidents where people basically observed this behavior happening.
Is there any idea of like a number? How many times this has happened?
I have no idea. First of all, we have low opportunity for the behavior to happen. How many people, die suddenly in their home, nobody checks on them, and they live with a cat. So it's not a frequently occurring behavior. And it's also possible that it happens, but it's not noticed. I was also a little worried because I didn't want to necessarily highlight something that might promote negative ideas about cats. People already kind of think cats are evil or plotting to kill us or just constantly scheming to get back at us. And so I wanted to be really careful about how this was presented to the public because it is the kind of topic that could really turn people against cats. Like, oh, they just want to kill people and eat them.
Feeling really good right now that I have a dog. So scientists didn't intend to study cats eating corpses. Why do you think they continued to look into it? What kind of value are we going to get out of that kind of research?
We primarily think of cats as predators, as animals who hunt, kill, and then eat what they've killed. And in this case, it really highlights the fact that they are also scavengers. So why would that be? I think one important thing to consider is that an animal who can hunt and scavenge is actually increasing their dietary repertoire. So now, if there's no available animals to hunt, it's possible that you could increase your reproductive fitness. In other words, your ability to pass on your genes by being adaptive, by being able to eat animals that have been killed by someone else that you can now take advantage of. And this is something that, again, we don't really think of it as being common among cats, although it's definitely documented in some of the scientific literature that cats will scavenge, but it's definitely much less than other animals like ferrets and dogs, who are big-time scavengers.
Wait, did she say dogs? No. There's no way my sweet girl would ever consider eating me.
There's actually been more documentation of dogs eating their owners than cats.
No!
Don't blame it all on the cats. I think it's difficult for humans to kind of set aside our morals and our kind of feelings about people or animals that are important to us. Most of us would never think about eating our pet, even if they died. And I think we tend to hold our companion animals maybe to a high moral standard that's really based in human beliefs and ethics and doesn't really have much to do with their reality. At the end of the day, if they're hungry and there's flesh around, they are going to be opportunistic and take advantage of what's available. So it's really important not to kind of think of this as, oh, your cat's plotting to kill you or cats are evil. The instinct to do what is necessary to survive is very strong, and that includes eating whatever is available.
So the cats in this study were feral cats. What does that tell us about the difference between feral cats and domesticated cats?
So domesticated cats and feral cats are both cats. There's no clear genetic difference between the two. So in the case of the current study, it's possible that these cats did not have any other food source aside from what they were able to hunt. So in that case, they might have been a little more motivated to scavenge because they were hungry.
So is it safe to say that we would see a little bit less of this behavior out of domesticated cats in a home that provides food?
You would anticipate that fewer of those cats would eat their dead owner. However, some of the case reports that I reviewed suggested that there was one dog who had freely available food. He actually had food in his stomach, and he still did consume part of his owner. So there may be other motivating factors. What was actually theorized in one paper was that what might happen is not that the animal just starts eating the person, but that they don't recognize that the person's dead at first. And so they might start pawing or even nipping at the owner's body because they think that the owner should respond to them. So they're kind of trying to get some reaction from the owner, and then from that they might tear into the flesh, and that might start a little cascade of the snacking. So while I would think that would reduce the likelihood of scavenging, we don't know. We don't have enough evidence to say it would stop it altogether.
So because of ethical issues, there hasn't been a specific study on it, but we do have mounting evidence that animals can or will eat their dead owner.
So it's not like cats are eating people left and right. It really has to be kind of a perfect storm of circumstances, which is typically that you have someone who lives alone in an isolated situation. They have an illness that might lead them to die suddenly, and they live with a pet who's freely moving around in their home. So that's the conditions that tend to lead to a pet indulging, I guess, or eating parts of their owner's bodies. And the other thing that's important to recognize is that just because animals will eat part of a corpse does not mean that they will eat you when you're alive. There's little risk to a living person if your animal does not have aggression issues to think that they're going to try to eat you or kill you while you're still living. I think this captures people's attention because people really don't understand cats very well, and so they tend to interpret their behaviors maybe in negative or malicious ways. So they think that maybe their cat's plotting revenge on them for taking that vacation, or because they don't like their new boyfriend. And so people really project a lot of emotional states onto their cats that their cat is probably not really going through. And I think to an extent, again, there's this kind of morbid fascination, and maybe some people actually like the idea that their cat might eat them after they die. A lot of people that I've talked to about this have said, if it helps my cat survive, I don't care, I'll be dead. So perhaps some people take a little pride in the naughtiness of cats, or this idea that cats, because they're perceived as somehow less trainable or less loyal than dogs, that they're automatically going to do something that maybe to us seems terrible, like eating bodies. I would just like to emphasize that, again, this research, as fascinating as it is, doesn't mean that we can tell if any particular cat is going to eat an individual. doesn't mean that most cats will do this. It's been observed, but it could be just that the circumstances have to be pretty extreme for this behavior to come up.
So it's been great and a little creepy chatting with you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.